our topic for today is something that happened just most recently, and it's something that's been happening really in the country. Nigeria first. We had that on our top stories yesterday on the program, but today we're going to look into it and see what's all about the Nigerian first story for our country. Just stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Business Daily, reaching you here on Trust TV. Now, before the break, I said we'll be looking at the Nigeria First that has been implemented by President Bola Tinubu's administration. Now, prior to now, this is not the first time you're hearing of anything related to the Nigerian First. But before we go into that, let's take a look at this report put together by Kehinde Amodu.
The Nigeria First policy comes amidst economic reforms being pushed by the Tinubu administration, including subsidy removals, a new foreign exchange regime, and efforts to restore investor confidence. By making local content central to government spending, the administration hopes to drive job creation, industrial growth, and sustainable economic development. The policy means Nigeria comes first in all procurement processes, meaning that no foreign goods that are already produced locally will be procured without a clear and justified reason.
Now, this seeks to foster a new business culture that will be bold, confident, but also very, very Nigerian. And it aims at making government to invest in our people and our industries by changing how government spends money, how we procure, and how also we build our economy. Going forward, Nigerian industry will take precedence in all procurement processes.
The Bureau of Public Procurement has been directed to revise and enforce fresh guidelines to favor local manufacturers and service providers. It has also been directed to create what is called a local content compliance framework for all government procurements.
The BPP has also been directed to deploy all procurement officers from the MDS. All the procurement officers posted to MDS will be reverted to the Bureau of Public Procurement as a line agency without jeopardizing possibility of efficiency.
Also on Monday, the federal government formally ratified and adopted a new roadmap for the Nigerian electricity supply industry. Minister of Power Adewale explained that the National Integrated Electricity Policy will replace the National Electric Power Policy of 2001. The policy is expected to encompass guidelines covering market design, analysis of the power value chain, regulatory frameworks, climate change adaptation strategies, promotion of local content.
All right, that's the report from Mr. Kehinde Amodu talking about the Nigeria First policy. You hear there the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, talking about what it entails and the steps that are going to be taken. Now, I have joining me virtually from Geneva, Switzerland, the DG of the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, NECA, Mr. Adewale Smatt-Oyerinde. Good morning. It's morning here in Nigeria. I'm not so certain what the time is over there. Hello?
Afternoon. It's afternoon here.
Okay,
so Good afternoon.
It's afternoon, so you're ahead of us then. Okay. All right then. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Geneva. Now, you spoke, and some dailies have carried you in saying that this Nigeria First is a very, very good approach. Can you tell us your take on it, actually?
Well, thank you once again for having us. I think it's a policy we have canvassed for many months, many years. For government, I think it's enlightened self-interest, as it were. The need for us to focus on the growth and development of our local manufacturing and service industry. Over many years, our propensity for foreign goods, and rightly so, has increased tremendously. In 2023, over $49 billion was expended as on imports. If you if you cut that by half, you can imagine the kind of breathing space that you give the naira. If you spend half of that on local goods, goods and services, you can also imagine the consequential effect on local industries. And as the local industries continue to expand and continue to be in a position to produce more, sell more, their capacity to also expand, their capacity to generate more employment, and their capacity to pay more will also progressively expand. So it's a policy that has so many positive effects beyond the less pressure on forex. That will also have some positive effect on the naira, as it were. It also helps the local businesses and let the country as a whole to be positioned to compete at the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. It is not profitable for us to be part of the AFTA, and then goods that are coming to this country are cheaper than the goods produced in this country. So every rational consumer will look for a cheap product. That is basically basic. We look for where to get cheap products, especially when the disposable income is not smiling. So we think the Nigeria First policy is right, in the right direction. We just hope that government will enforce implementation at the MDA level and also do what is needful to make the operating environment conducive, hospitable, and friendly for local businesses, so that we can maximize this opportunity that the Nigeria First policy will bring.
All right, so Mr. Oyerinde, now you said something, we've been clamoring for this for a while now, and I'm going to take us back a bit to know that this is not actually the first time that we are having something like this in our country. It started from the 70s, and we've seen, there've been a lot of things happening, but that's just very recently, for the Jonathan administration, we had it when it emphasized the content, local content in the oil and gas sector through the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board. Muhammad Buhari's administration had it where the idea of self-reliance and prioritizing Nigerian interests gained stronger rhetoric under economic reforms and protectionist policies, e.g. the border closures to enable us buy Nigerian rice, and of course import restrictions to enable us. That they've done all those things. Now local content, she said that already. Now what's going to make this different? What's going to see that this would actually do something, have an impact on the economy, and actually help local content production and usage as well?
This issue from two or three different perspectives. Our perspective, really. One, if you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you should stop doing is stop digging. Progressively, in the last two administrations, we have dug a lot of hole for ourselves. That at a point in the last 2 years, if certain steps were not taken, we'll probably be in a deeper mess. The last administration were borrowing, they were printing money, we were eating our breakfast for dinner, and we thought we were in a good place. So now I think the state that we are currently in makes change imperative. It makes change as one of the biggest options that we have. Now, the private sector also, the states that we find ourselves progressively over many years, has made it also imperative for us to also play a monitoring role in the context of what the MDAs, what they are doing. Because we also have to monitor. The president has said the MDAs, ministry, department, and agencies must buy local products. Things that we monitor so that we are sure that actually that policy is giving life, and is giving life explicitly. On the issue of the border closure of the last administration, we think strongly that it wasn't well thought out. The implementation was not good enough, which created the challenges. Just like sorry, I'm digressing. The Naira change policy, we also feel good policy, which could have, if it's probably if it was positively implemented, will have solved the issue of inclusiveness for us, the issue of getting almost all Nigerians into the banking space. And if you can get everybody into the banking space, you progressively reduce the issue of corruption and fraud, because you can track, just follow the money, as they say. But if you are not in that system, a lot of transactions can still go on out of that system. Good policies, but the implementation was not okay. And we just hope that the government will do well, and you can be rest assured that the private sector we won't take this lying low. We also be very active in the context of continuous advocacy to make sure this works, and also get government to do the needful. And one of the needful is this, which is very important. A rational consumer, even government itself, will not, I believe strongly, that an agency of government will not go and buy a tin of milk in the Nigerian market for 100 naira when he can get a substitute, an imported substitute, for 30 naira. I'm not sure they will do that, because prudency, effective utilization of resources will also come into play. So, and beyond the policy, government need to be deliberate in creating a hospitable environment that will enable Nigerian manufacturers and Nigerian business owners to produce in such a way that the unit cost of a product is less than the unit cost of an imported substitute. So we need to deal with the whole gamut of the regulatory and the environment itself, so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where the imported products are progressively still cheaper than the average locally made product. If you don't resolve that, you don't realize we are shooting ourselves in the foot, because we'll be spending too much to buy Nigerian products, while the foreign substitute will remain cheaper. And if government can deal with it, the average Nigerian whose disposable income is also progressively reducing by inflation or whatever macroeconomic challenges, you can't sell that to him. You can't tell me to buy a local product for 100 naira when I can get the substitute for 50 naira. It doesn't work. So we have to deal, while we are dealing with it at the frontal level, government also need to mobilize the citizens and support the private sector. While we commend what the government has done or is doing, but more support needs to be given, so that the production of a unit of a product is less than the value of the import, of the substitute import.
All right. Now, thank you for that. Let's come back to, you talked about it, local manufacturers, and I want us to go there a bit. Now, how do you think, because that's the truth, the government has said this, however, are they ready? Do they have what it takes to meet the demand when this becomes, for all government? Imagine if the federal government says the only things we use in this country are all Nigerian made products, down to the pencil, down to the toothpicks, which we import, by the way, or down to even the vehicles. Everything we use as a government is Nigerian made. Do you think that our manufacturers or our content creators have what it takes to meet that demand?
The recommendation we'll be making to government is, this process also have to be faced, because the simple economics analysis of demand and supply will also play. If with our population, huge productive population, if the output, as in product and services, is less than the demand, if the supply is less than the demand, naturally prices increase. So, and we believe strongly that when the president said that for you to buy whatever it is that is imported, then you need to seek some special approval. I think it's also in recognition that you cannot absolutely feed yourself. I'm not sure there's a country that is feeding itself absolutely. The law of comparative advantage will still come in place. So is it comparatively advantageous for us to produce this, or it is better for us to import it because of the cost of production? Those are the issues, the economics that will come to when the implementation itself come into play. Can we feed ourselves? Can we be self-sufficient? I'm not sure there's a nation that is self-sufficient. I stand to be corrected. Okay. So, but predominantly, those things that you have the capacity to produce, then you should produce it. And when I said phased implementation, because for local manufacturers, they also need some level of gestation period to start the expansion process, to start the recruitment process, to start the different kind of engagement that you need to do to set up your factory, which is probably currently running at 50% capacity utilization, to set it up to meet the huge demands. So those have to be done. A bit of work that still needs to be done at the background to make this policy effective. And definitely the private sector will be sharing its own alternative policy recommendation or ideas on how this can be implemented and implemented successfully with government. And we trust that government will find those recommendations useful.
All right, now, since, of course, the government wants us to start producing locally, it means that I believe there will be some sort of incentives. Now, what do you think these incentives should be to help? Because, obviously, this is another form of tackling unemployment and underemployment, because now people can go into manufacturing and production and then, of course, help the economy. All in all, this is supposed to help the economy, but I believe the government has some role to play to see that this comes to fruition. What one is an ideal gestation period, as you mentioned earlier, to allow for the manufacturers to be able to meet some sort of demand, and two, what incentives can the government give to help upcoming new people enter the scene and be able to equally cushion the demand?
Incentives. First, we need to deal with the issue of energy. Recently the Minister for Power mentioned that the cost of power is going to increase. We really think we should be able to innovatively, and I'm picking my words carefully, to innovatively subsidize certain things for the overall good of this economy. There's no reason why the government cannot deliberately create industrial hubs, industrial parks, and subsidize electricity in that hub, just for one single reason, that the cost of production in those places become less. There's no reason why not. Because if it fits into our overall national development plan to say, look, we must produce locally and we must produce cheaply. Produce cheaply in such a way that our local market is competitive enough to compete at the African Continental Free Trade Market, then let's do something for our national interest to say, look, this industrial park, this industrial hubs, power will be subsidized for whatever reason, just to achieve our overall economic gain. Because there's no reason, there's no way that the cost of these products at the shelf will not be influenced by the cost of the inputs. So if power is becoming you're now in band A and you are moved to band A plus, you factor in the cost of that power, you factor it into the cost of production. If raw materials are becoming expensive or through regulatory issues, regulatory challenges, you are paying these fees, this tax, this and this. Thank God the Senate has passed two of the tax bills.
Well, that's
but if those are not addressed, you don't realize you feed those costs back into the cost of the goods and services, which will naturally just spiral the output, the cost of those products in shelf. So we need to deal with the regulatory environment to make it more friendly. Let regulators regulate and let business owners have some breathing space to do their business. The other challenge of infrastructure, let government provide relevant support. It's on the long run for the growth and development of our economy. For me, that is just the end point. How do we develop? We need to come up with innovative ways to make sure that we support our industry, because if those industries are growing, if they are expanding, the challenges of job creation will be solved significantly. If a lot of our young ones are gainfully employed, you have indirectly resolved the issue of unemployment, insecurity. You know, if everybody is gainfully employed, everybody will pay personal income tax. So the state government, they are making more money on personal income tax. The more they are gainfully employed, the more the propensity to consume. Government is making more money on VAT. The more government is making money on VAT and businesses are expanding, the more those businesses are in the position to pay more with the context of company income tax. So it is in our best interest to make sure that the private sector thrives, because the benefit is just massive for all of us. But coming back to the summation of the issue of support, deal with the regulatory issues, deal with the infrastructural issues, and then give the private sector a breathing space to actually contribute to the development of this economy. On the second part is the gestation period. It is neither here nor there. For SMEs, the gestation period might be less. For big industries, before you import machineries, before you import this, before you set up the factory, before you start recruitment for talent, it takes a bit of time. So the conversation around gestation period will be different. And you also find some industries that doesn't really need the gestation period. As at tomorrow, in fact, as at yesterday, they are ready to upscale production. They just need the relevant incentives and the environment to thrive.
All right, so you already took us to our second conversation, which was on the Senate passing 2 tax reform bills and removing contentious clauses and retaining 7.5% VAT. There's the VAT. So let me just give a key highlights on what that is, and we'll still keep on talking with Mr. Oyerinde. Now, the Senate approved the Nigerian Revenue Service Establishment Bill 2025, which renames the Federal Inland Revenue Service to the Nigerian Revenue Service, NRS, and the Nigerian Tax Administration Bill 2025. The VAT rate was maintained despite earlier proposals to increase the value added tax from 7.5 to 15. It was maintained at 7.5. Now, contentious clauses were removed, and some of them, of course, in the original proposals, including the planned VAT increase and the reintroduction of the inheritance tax. Now, a bit further, now the Nigerian Revenue Service has been renamed that Federal Inland Revenue Service to the Nigerian Revenue Service, as I said earlier. This transformation aims to improve efficiency in tax collection and administration across various tax arms in Nigeria. The bill also creates an independent tax authority to streamline operations and enhance the government's ability to enforce tax compliance, aligning with global best practices. Expanded powers is what has been given. Automation of tax processes. Now let's come to the other bill that was passed. It is the Nigerian Tax Administration Bill. Introduces a new framework for tax administration modernizing outdated regulations and aligning with international tax standards. The bill has key provisions that simplify tax compliance and digital taxation. Of course, you already know that the value-added tax debate was it ended unanimously at 7.5%. We're not going to increase that. Now, exemptions and support for low-income groups. That's one of the things that was done yesterday. The tax reforms also include a provision in alleviating the burden on low-income earners, particularly minimum wage earners, who will be exempt from income tax. This is expected to reduce financial strain on Nigeria's vulnerable populations while still ensuring high earners contribute to national revenue. Now, progressive taxation says that by exempting the lowest earners, the tax system becomes more progressive, which is in line with global efforts to ensure that taxation does not disproportionately affect the poorest. There's been quite a lot. Equally, VAT revenue sharing formula. The new VAT revenue sharing formula was also a major part of the reforms. The new structure will now allocate 50% to be distributed equally among all states and local governments, 20% based on population, ensuring that more populous states receive a larger share, and 30% based on consumption levels in each state, allowing states with higher consumption rates to receive more funds, thus ensuring the wealthier states that will generate more VAT revenue benefit proportionally. Now, according to them, the formula aims to foster fairness in the allocation of tax revenue and is expected to reduce fiscal disparities between states, promoting better resource distribution. There's been so much conversation about the tax reform, and as you equally earlier mentioned, it's the tax reform, which you said, luckily, so that means you believe and agree that these ones that have been passed are actually good for the country. Could you, take us through that thought process?
First, let us congratulate or commend the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Tax and Fiscal Policy Reforms, Mr. Adewale Smatt-Oyerinde, and the whole member of the committee for the yeoman's job they did in the context of stakeholder engagement. I'm not sure even while we are doing constitutional reviews that the engagement was as much as the committee did, transversing all the nooks and crannies of this country, getting stakeholder engagement. So kudos to the chairman of the committee and all members of the committee, for which the private sector is also one. Also commend the Senate for passing the two bills yesterday. While we are yet to receive the real copy. I mean, the copy of these. We have the highlights, this kind as you mentioned. But for us, I think it's a watershed in the context of tax administration in this country, and we think seriously is the direction to go. Is it a perfect bill? There is none, and because there will never be a perfect bill. That's the reason why the context of amendments also come into play at the global level, that there will always be provisions for amendment as situation evolve, as the economy evolves, both locally and globally. Then the opportunity to amend the bill will also continue to come. But suffice to say, more relief for minimum wage earners, put more money in their pockets, more relief for organized businesses in the context of streamlining the tax and the numerous tax that we currently pay. Kudos to good news for organized businesses also. So there is even the VAT sharing formula. It also makes it a bit more equitable in the context of the sharing. I can remember that the governors forum had a long conversation, had a long list of issues with the sharing formula until the engagement was stepped up, and eventually we arrived at where we arrived at. Beyond the bill, I think implementation will be the next challenge for us. Because the context of automation, that means the whole administration, the whole framework for implementation, you need to spend money, you need to buy new equipment, you need to invest in ICT, you need to invest in on cyber security, you need to invest in talents, you need to train and retrain talents, you need continuous stakeholder engagement so that everybody can be aligned. And for us, is happening at a good time where we are having the fourth, the biggest advocacy platform for employers, the Employers Summit, happening in June in Abuja. And we also believe strongly, because we'll also be focusing on fiscal and fiscal policy and tax reforms. In fact, all the reforms basically is what we'll be looking at the summit. It also gives an opportunity of engagement for government and the FRS. Okay, it's no more FRS now. For whatever names we call them now, those agencies to actually start engaging the private sector, so that the implementation of the act, when eventually of the bill, when it's signed into act, the implementation will have the robust support of all stakeholders. Yeah.
All right, so now we're going to move away from that to another conversation I said we're going to have in the program, and that's about the IMF and our Nigerian relationship. Apparently, they've taken us off the debtor countries. We're no longer part of the people who are in the debtor countries. There's going to be a video that will be showing us, a slideshow showing us on that list that Nigeria is no longer on that list. Now, but just a bit context to it, the International Monetary Fund has officially removed Nigeria from its list of debtor countries following the nation's successful clearance of $1.61 billion debt. This development marks a significant milestone in Nigeria's fiscal management and international financial standing. If you can look at the screen, we've seen it up there when, when we get to N, you see that Nigeria is not there. Now, key highlights is that debt clearance. Nigeria has settled its outstanding debt at the IMF. Fiscal discipline, the repayment now reflects Nigeria's commitment to fiscal responsibility and effective debt management strategies. Now, this is a good one for us as a country. Now, if we could have that pause briefly, you can see there, we see Namibia, Nepal, Nicaragua, Niger, and mostly after Niger we go to Nigeria, but then we're not seeing that we're going to North Macedonia, the Republic, and then Pakistan. So right now, Nigeria is no longer on debtor countries list of the International Monetary Fund. I'm sure it's a good news for us as a country. What is your take on that? Mr. Oyerinde?
Why it is commendable? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Why it is commendable? I think one of the things we need to interrogate is, what exactly did they use the loan for? What exactly can we point to on ground? I know when several administrations have incurred this loan over time, but what exactly can we point to say this ABC were the infrastructures that we built with this loan? I mean, those are the interrogation that I think we should be having, beyond celebrating the fact that we are out of the list, which is absolutely good news. But I think we should go beyond that. We are not there, to start interrogating, asking ourselves, what exactly did we use that burden? Why did we burden ourselves that much? What exactly is on ground, to say, look, for our exposure to the loan, these are ABC infrastructures that we built. These are ABC human capital development items that we invested. I think those are the issues that we need to interrogate, and there's no better time to start interrogating it, and also to urge the government that as we are exiting one, we are not dragging ourselves more into more debt. So in the context of Nigerian first, the policy of Nigerian first, I think government should also be looking inwardly to say, look, how can we cut our coat according to our material, so that our continuous exposure to borrowing progressively reduces. Because if you borrow, you're also paying humongously in the context of interest rates. which also eats into, at the point in the last administration, we were told that almost 90% of our revenue is being used to service debt. A lot of things happen in this environment, and that we don't ask questions, and we just throw our hands in the air. People complain on Twitter, you go on social media and complain, and after a while we all move back to continue our life. Because I think there should be a structure where we interrogate all these issues, and I think the right time to start interrogating those issues is now that we have exited the IMF loan. Hopefully we won't get back to that list.
All right, just before you go briefly, and how would this affect foreign investments into our economy?
Now, the fact that we are out of it says something.
Okay.
It's at least it gives the international community some respite that look, Nigeria is responsible. You are a responsible country. You borrowed irrespective of what you use it for, but the fact that you could repay shows some level of solvency. That yes, something is right in the context of your environment, which also gives an investor the confidence to say yes, if you can pay your loan, then the environment is has some level of stability, within the context of what you are doing. For the IMF and for other Bretton Woods institutions, the more you borrow, the better for them, because they are making a lot of money within the context of the interest that you pay. But substantially, the fact that you borrow and you can liquidate your debt says something about your liquidity, says something about your medium and long-term solvency as a nation, which also gives investors some level of confidence that yes, something is working within the context of your environment.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Adewale Smatt-Oyerinde, for joining us on the Business Daily this morning on Trust TV. It's actually been quite insightful having you discuss on the Nigerian First policy, the Senate passing 2 tax reform bills, and the IMF removing us from their in-debtor countries list.
Thank you for having us once again.
All right, enjoy the rest of your day. That was Mr. Adewale Smatt-Oyerinde, the DG of the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, NEC, and we've been talking about the Nigerian First policy, the Senate passing 2 of the tax reform bills, and the IMF removing Nigeria from its in-debtor countries. It's been quite a very insightful conversation this morning on the Business Daily. That's the much we have for you today on the program. Same time, same place tomorrow. Don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms for more news, programs, and documentaries. I'm your host, Chiamaka Nwafor. Bye for now.